Welcome to the Hope Mongers podcast. I am your host, Apaketo Anda, a licensed therapist and the author of Reflections of a Hope Monger. Hope is our theme, and helping you align yourself to your life's purpose is our goal. After listening, you will be educated, inspired, and elevated to unlock your own greatness. So please subscribe to this podcast, share it, and give us a good rating. Now, let's get started. Well, hello, and welcome to Hope Mongers. Today, I am excited because I am joined by a phenomenal young woman. Her name is Miss Nelia Jemfi. You know, one thing I want to say, and I believe this, and something I keep saying, is that I, for one, till the day Jesus calls me home, I want to learn something new every day. That's something I just said to the Lord. I believe we should never stop growing. And I think that part of growing means we must be open to just learn from every opportunity that God brings our way. And as older adults, it means that we also will learn a lot from the younger generation. So, as much as we want to pour into them and leave them a legacy, which we will, it's also important to hear the wisdom that God has put into them as well. And so, I'm so excited to have Cornelia Jemfi join us. So, one of the in her bio, she actually quotes Michelle Obama and says this, and I believe it. She says, "You never stop becoming. Each and every day, you evolve, you grow, and you nurture." And that's a quote that Cornelia has from Michelle Obama. So, again, Cornelia Opoku Jemfi, who goes by the name Nelia, which she says she coined that, first name after an experience that she has come to believe to birth her into her purpose. Cornelia believes that as daughters of God, our purpose is both individualized as well as collective. Nelia holds a Bachelor of Law and a Master of Laws in Maritime Law, and her career ambition is to become an international maritime lawyer. Nelia says she's a woman who aspires to pursue and live out her God ordained purpose and assignment unapologetically. That's a woman of my own heart. In addition to be an aspiring, amazing, phenomenal maritime lawyer, she's also a writer. She has a ton of blog posts. And recently, she has debuted her first book called Being Phenomenal, a handbook for today's young Christian woman. And, when Nelia told me how old she was, I was blown away. In addition to all of this, she is a speaker who inspires her audience through her lived experience. And so, Nelia, welcome to Hope Mongers.
Thank you, Auntie Abba. And I'm excited that you started talking about the fact that I'm probably the youngest that has been on the podcast. And I do not take this opportunity for granted. Like the women that have graced this podcast, I'm like, how am I here today? But I'm here. And I'm really, really grateful for the opportunity to just share and just to chat with you.
We are honored. We are honored to have you on Hope Mongers. Um, so, are we allowed to ask how old you are? Because when you told me on our phone conversation yesterday, honestly, I was blown away. Nelia, how old are you?
I mean, it's public knowledge. I'm 25.
Wow. 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 So listen, here at Hope Mongers, we like to go beyond the resume to find out what makes the person tick. So please tell us a little bit about yourself. And I'm also curious to find out about that story, the story of how Nelia was birthed out of Cornelia, which is linked to your purpose. So please tell us.
All right. Thank you once again. Yeah, my name is Cornelia. I am the last of four children. I have two elder sisters and a brother. I come from a very normal, typical Ghanaian home. Um, my mom is a reverend minister. Like she's been a pastor for all my life. My siblings say that she wasn't a pastor at the time that they were born, but I have known her as a pastor all my life. So I think that it has really had a very massive influence on how and has shaped me in a lot of ways that I can really even explain or understand.
The anointing is there for sure, for sure.
Amen, I receive it. I had a very normal childhood. I grew up in Sunyane, a town in Brunga Half region in Ghana. Then from there, I proceeded to senior high school, did my first degree, and then I recently graduated with my master's in law. So that is like about it, me in a nutshell. But along this journey from my childhood into my young adulthood, which I'm still in,
Mm-hmm.
I have encountered certain experiences that I believe have shaped me or have birthed me into purpose for a much better context. And one of these experiences happened when I was in third year, going to fourth year in my undergrad program, where it was time for SRC elections, and I had wanted to actually did vie for the position of the SRC Women's Commissioner, and I'm not one that really likes politics, so I felt that I had something to give to the school community. I didn't know what it was at the time. I just knew that I liked to write. I knew that I had at the time formed a certain perception about womanhood and young womanhood that I felt I could share and I could help my other students out. So I went all out full force to the best of my abilities to vie for this position, but I didn't emerge as a winner. But what is important, what I feel like that really birthed me into my purpose was because at the day that the elections was called and I knew that I hadn't won the elections, I was on the school park, like where it was an election is like everyone is around. And I am in the middle of the school park and I just break down. I kneel down in the park and I start crying. And I wasn't crying because I had lost the election. Like there was just this cry that I just really could not explain. And people really thought that, oh, she's crying because she lost the election, she's a crybaby and whatnot. But then it's just that cry that I have never given birth. But I felt like something was just coming out of me. I just really cannot describe it. And so I went back to my apartment or hostel that night. And as I slept and I woke up the following morning, I just downloaded the app WordPress, and that was when I wrote my very first blog post. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what was going to come out of it, but I just wrote my very first blog post, which I don't even think made sense. I think it was so I wrote about Maya Angelou's Phenomenal Woman poem, and I kind of just did a little bit of explanation. I don't know what I was doing, but from that point, I kind of started on this journey, and here I am today. So that's why I believe that experience was really what birthed me into my purpose and into where I am today.
So how did it become Nelia? I'm trying to figure that out.
Yeah. So that's actually funny because people like to call me Kone, and I didn't like Kone. And at the time when I started writing the blog post, I wanted to get a pen name because Cornelia is just too long. Like people don't like to call three syllables names. So I wanted to find a name that was going to reflect who I had been at that moment. And so I was just looking for variations of my name, and I came across the variation Nelia, which also means horn. And I felt like, whoa, like this is something that I think I am. Like and horn represents someone who is resilient, someone like who just really goes against all the odds. And like I just really loved it. So yeah, it was a meaning, and it was also because I didn't want people to call me Connie. I didn't want that to be my pen name. And I felt like Nilia is kind of a cute name, but then it also has like a very unique meaning that I could really relate to. And that's how come I kind of adopted that name.
So a horn made out of what? Did you know when you say a horn is resilient? What
Um, I
define?
really do not know, but it just meant like a horn, like on the animals that have like really big horns, and how like they
Oh,
can just like, oh, not the horn, like the horns, the horns from
because
like
I was thinking a horn blasts out and makes a sound, a noise for
mm,
everybody in the catchment area to hear.
yeah,
And
yeah.
so I was actually feeling that for you as well because you are certainly becoming a voice for your generation. So
Yeah,
girl,
yeah.
so girl receive that as well.
I think I would. Thank you. Yeah, so that's how that came about.
Wonderful. And congratulations because you recently graduated with your master's in law, correct?
Yes, I did.
And it was not an easy journey.
No, I did not catch a break. I really literally didn't catch a break. But yeah.
You know, and none of us could have known this from because you kept on with your blog posts, you kept on with your video posts, your encouragement, encouraging all of us, in our kind of our community on Facebook. and yet you were going through something,
Mhm.
which
Mhm.
ultimately ended up being a testimony,
Mhm.
which you shared on Facebook. Uh, I read on Facebook. I think it was last week. Nelia, tell us about what you went through.
Okay, so this experience is what I have come to term great grace and a lot of tears in between because it was
Hold
an
up, hold up. Great grace and a lot of tears in between. So, which
yeah,
means it was a journey, right?
yep,
It was a
yeah,
journey of resilience. It was a journey that the grace of God came in.
yeah,
Even so, it didn't mean that it was easy. There were
yeah,
tears.
yeah,
I'm thinking that there were difficult tears, but also perhaps at the end, tears of joy and relief
yeah.
and so on. Amazing. Grit, grace, and a lot of tears. Go ahead. I can't wait to hear it.
So, what is interesting is that I actually forgot like a very big part of this testimony when I shared it. And I said about you have schooled outside, and you know that under no circumstance would you be allowed to even start a program when you do not have all your credentials in. But
Absolutely.
when I had my admission letter, it didn't state that it was a conditional offer because I hadn't submitted all my required admission documents at the time. And
Mm-hmm.
so when I actually started the program, that was when it was like, oh, by the way, Cornelia, and there was a Friday afternoon, I was just going about my normal day in school. And I received an email from my faculty graduate secretary saying that, oh, admissions office is saying that we need your documents to be up to date and they need to put your file away. So, do you have that? If you don't have that, let your school send that over. And that was when the panic started because I didn't have it. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
have the document, and I knew that my school at the time was having some issues that they weren't really being truthful and forthcoming to this with the students about. And so I called up my eldest sister and I'm like, this is what is going on. They've asked for the certificate and the transcript, the certified transcript. Because what I used to apply was a provisional transcript. And
Right.
that itself was like a miracle. Like, who is going to give you admission on a provisional transcript? And so she says, well, I'm going to go to the school and we'll try and figure it out. And that would be like the next year of ups and downs with this institution, which would eventually have me to withdraw from the program. And as I'm going through all of this, I'm still having to show up because I had already started the program, and so I had to finish that term. And even
Mm-hmm.
before I finished that term, I had been locked out of the school library. The school, I had been told that I couldn't access any professors. I couldn't access literally all my student benefits had been stripped away. The only thing that I could still make use of was my bus pass because yeah, just to
Wow.
get around the city. But then apart from that, like I wasn't allowed to use a library or anything. And
So,
it's
so,
not
so,
answer, but
so you were in the you were still having to submit your deliverables in terms of assignments and papers and so on
yeah, for the term, for the first term that
for
I
the
had
first
started, that was the
semester.
first
Mm-hmm.
semester. That would be the fall of 2019.
Mm-hmm.
That was when I was like literally 6 weeks into the program, that was when they had asked for this. And so I knew that I probably wasn't going to make it into the winter term. But then
Mm-hmm.
again, it was like because you think you're not going to make it into the winter term doesn't mean that you shouldn't have to do the work for this term. So you still have to do the work
Absolutely.
for this term. And while I'm doing the work for this term, I have been logged out of school libraries and like stuff like that. And it's like it's like you're out, but you're not. It was just a very weird spot to be in Antigua and now
So
that when I
how
look back,
how were you able to do your research? Was that still possible?
I just made use of the internet, and thankfully I had some books that I had taken out of the library at the time, and my return date was like months ahead, so I was able to use those. But then for the most part, I used the internet, and just made use of as much resources as I could gather from the internet to finish that term's work.
Did you have a support system among your classmates?
No one knew.
Wow.
No one knew. It was just a friend of mine that I had to tell her when I was eventually asked to leave the school because we took a course together, and so she was going to figure out that I wasn't in class, and so I had to tell him like, hey, like by the way, I've been sacked from school, and she's like, oh, you're lying, and I'm like,
Wow.
I'm telling the truth. I have been sacked from school. I told her that I'm even coming from our dean's office. Like I'm literally from the dean's office and I've been sacked. And then she
Mm.
says, if I were to be you, I'll pack my bags and go back home. That was what she said. And then I'm
Wow.
like, I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to go back. I don't know how to look back. I would rather take a break and pause where I'm at
Mm.
and then try to find ways to advance. But I don't know how to go back. I don't know how to
I
go back.
love that. Great.
Yeah.
That's great. That's resilience right there.
Yeah.
And a conviction, right?
Hmm.
I'm
Hmm.
not going to go back, not in life and not in this situation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
So fast forward to me getting everything sorted out, and that was like a very messy situation between my family and this institution back home, and even the institution here, where it got to a point where they were suspecting that we think you're a fraud because we have two transcripts from you, and the name itself doesn't even match because I mean, the schools here are very particular about these things. It's like even
Mm.
if one letter of your name is not out, it's like we don't know this person. Who is this person? And they're just asking me questions, and I'm like, I don't even have answers to these questions. I'm like, I'm a victim in this situation. I went to a school, I
Yes.
paid fees, I
Yes.
wrote exams. I do not know how the school ran the administration, so I have no answers to this. But then it was like, why did you go to the school to begin with?
Mm.
And why haven't you sued them? And a whole lot of things. So eventually, God comes through, and I am able to get my certificate and transcript from the school.
Mm.
But then it turns out the school is like, we don't even trust the source anymore. So let it go through West. That is World Education Service.
Mm.
And it goes through West, and it takes about 2 or 3 months because of COVID
Wow.
and this whole delay. And when West eventually submits the results, it's inconclusive. So my dean sent me an email on Friday evening, and she's like, "Well, Cornelia, West has submitted your validation report, and it's inconclusive. So I'm not sure how we can still help you." And
Wow.
how was this inconclusive? So I had to like really write a long, detailed essay to to someone at West. I don't know who it really even was. And
Yes.
then I had to copy my deans and everyone. Like I had to detail everything because I said we sent you the package, we sent you
Mm.
my transcripts, we sent you everything you asked for. How is this inconclusive? And the rest of it all, they don't even explain why it's inconclusive. They just said that, well, we don't know. Like we don't know if she completed the school or not, and we don't know
Wow.
if she has her degree or not. So that gets rectified. I start the program again, but at this time I am just tired.
How long were you out of the course of the
So
program?
I was out end of December 2019 till September 2020.
Wow. That's a
So
good 8 months
yeah,
or 9 months.
yeah, 8 9 months to get back
Wow.
into it. So yeah, when I'm getting back into it, I'm tired. I am mentally exhausted. I just have lost a. At this point, I'm like, let me just finish this and go. I'm not even in for making good grades or anything anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, these were times where I really became aware of what mental health really is. Because
Yes.
before then, I had heard people through depression and anxiety and all those words around, and I'm like, me, like, I'm a joyful soul. I'm a joyful being. Like, I can
Right.
be in this place. But I was in that place. I really was in a place where I felt like, because there was a point where it didn't feel like my school was going to come through. It didn't feel like I was going to get my certificate. So then I actually had to start looking for alternatives. Like, if I don't get this law degree, I should psych myself that my 4 years has gone to waste. And the money that I have paid to come to Canada has also gone to waste. So I had to psych myself up to start all over again. It was just a mess really going on out there. So when I'm like finally getting back into the program, I'm like, I just want to get us done. Like I just want to leave. So I wasn't pulling my weight. Like to be honest, I was just doing the very bare minimum. And until still my professors call me and they're like, we think that you are not doing, not that you're doing this on purpose, but we think you can do better because we've seen your
Mm.
previous work. And we just are not happy with how your academic is going right now. So we think you should do better. And that was the point at which I came to really understand and be aware that everything that had happened to me, because initially I was reacting to it as if it was happening, but I was just like a front seat observer to everything that was going on. But
Mm.
then when I got to the point where I had to accept that this happened to me, it didn't happen around me, it didn't happen to someone that I know, it happened to me. And my life wasn't just delayed within this 8 months, because I completed my undergrad in 2017. And so,
Mm.
all things being equal, if everything had really gone as planned, I should have probably even been called to the bar in Ghana by now, because of the timeline at the time that I'm even starting this master's program. And so it's not just that 8 months that had gone to waste, it was about 2 years before that. And then now
Mm.
this 8, 9 months that had also
Mm.
gone to waste. And like, I had to just get to the point where I had to accept that this had happened to me. It wasn't happening around me. Just stop being in denial. You went through this. And I think that sometimes it's very important that we go through things, that we recover physically, but then our mental and emotional and spiritual self really wouldn't have caught up with where we are at physically. So
And I think,
physical.
what I'm hearing is it's important to you. You talked about denial. It's important to get acceptance that this happened to me. And it's not that because sometimes if you think about it as happening around you, then maybe there's nothing you can do about it, and you're kind of just flittly floating. But when you
Yeah.
understand it's happening to me, therefore this is my life, therefore there's something I need to do, then you are starting to take charge of your life.
Yeah.
And you're
Yeah.
absolutely right. It's traumatic, it sounds like.
Yeah.
It was a traumatic experience. It
Yeah.
wasn't even as if I'm thinking you didn't have family. Where do you live again? Tell me
At
what's
Halifax, Nova Scotia.
Halifax, Nova Scotia. So I'm thinking, I don't know, you don't have family there. So even
No.
that close support system, and this all happened when you were actually even new to the program. So it's rough.
Mhm.
And then there was COVID. So you weren't even going out a whole lot.
And then there's COVID. So I mean, before COVID happened, COVID like really hit Canada between, I think, March, April-ish. And
Mm.
this had started like way back in December or November, December for me. So like before COVID happened, I was already in my own bubble of a pandemic that I was trying to navigate. So yeah, Antia, but you're really right that once I came to accept that this happened to me and I had to take charge, and then that was when I had to like really get back into the the space where I have to graduate, because I was looking at not graduating the spring, and it wasn't even like a question. It was like, we don't think you can. We really should think you should consider taking the summer term,
Mm.
because you have so much work to do, and we just don't think you can do it. And I remember telling my prof that I will. And then she was actually surprised when I submitted my final paper to her. She's like, Cornelia, you made it. Congratulations.
Wow.
So that is the my story of great grace and a lot of tears in between. This is like a very abridged version
A very
of
abridged version
everything.
of a difficult period of your life.
Yeah.
If you
It
had
was
to summarize and give us a few points that you learned from it, what did you learn from this experience?
the first thing I learned from this whole thing is that, sometimes God will give you the grace, but you have to play your part. Like, I
Mm.
understood that God gave me the grace to go through this period, and there was this particular day where I was having like suicidal ideations, and I just felt God tell me, like, I really felt the Spirit of God tell me in the period that, so, I mean, yeah, this is what you're thinking about right now. If you left or if you did something cool, but then you won't be here to see the end. And
Mm-hmm.
you're going to deny every other person that needs this story, that needs to hear this testimony. You're going to deny
Mm.
them the right to the story. And I think that's very important, because when I even was about to share my story, I wasn't sure if I wanted to. But then, I really prayed about it, because it's social media. Like, people can take this in, it could like really, it could have gone south, like, could have really gone bad for me, especially.
They can make it salacious and then turned into a whole different thing. I get
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Yes.
And more so, I knew that people knew the school in question that I was talking about, and people were agitated. You tell us the school, you need to warn people, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. And so it was a point where I feel like God would give you the grace. And yeah, I was saying, so when I had the suicidal ideation and everything, and I felt like the Holy Spirit Spirit tell me that you need to be here to see the end of this whole thing,
Mhm.
and I'm going to carry you through. And
Mhm.
so at that point, the only thing I knew that I had the grace to go through
Mhm.
it because God
Mhm.
had told me that, and I had felt
Mhm.
that really heavily within my spirit. But then that was not enough to pull me through. That was not enough to let me graduate. That was not enough to help me write my research papers. I had a part to play. And I
Mhm.
think most of the time, sometimes we get comfortable and we settle in the idea that, well, the grace of God abounds. Yet it abounds, but then what you do with the grace of God is really what is going to give you the results. Like, it's not the only thing that you need to help you succeed. So that was the first thing that I learned, that sometimes God will give us, not all sometimes, God gives us the grace all the time. But what you make of that grace is really what is going to make the difference between you and the next person. And that is where your grit and your resilience comes in. The second thing I got from this whole experience was that, sometimes we can be victims of circumstances that we had no part in.
Mhm.
Because, like I said, I went to a school, I paid tuition, I wrote on my exam, I didn't flout any rule. I thought I did all my due diligence, but it turns out that I still became a victim.
Mhm.
And sometimes we feel like we have to blame ourselves, but it's not always your fault. I know that the natural cause of action is that uh, you bear the consequence of your action, but sometimes it really isn't your action. Sometimes it's someone else's negligence that puts you in that place.
Yeah.
Sometimes someone else's. It's just something that you really had no control over.
Life happens, right? And sometimes bad things happen to good people. And I think
Exactly.
sometimes as Christians, we think, okay, well, if I'm a Christian and I serve God, then why am I
Mm,
sad? Why am I depressed? Why did this
mm,
bad thing, like, Lord, why did this bad thing happen to
mm.
me? And of
Yeah,
course, God doesn't give us bad things. However,
yeah,
when the world itself that we live in is a fallen world, and people make mistakes and people do bad things which
yeah,
can affect us.
yeah,
um but
definitely.
God gives us the grace to walk through them, but
Does, really
yes,
does.
yes. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that was the next thing that I learned. And I mean, it's difficult to accept that, especially when you didn't wrong these people, and you didn't like. It's just like, you feel like you have to be a good person and everything will fall in place for you when you go through any struggle. And that was a life that I really wanted. So I have really lived by the rules for majority of my life, where I'm like, if you do this, this is what is going to happen. Like, you're not
Mm-hmm.
going to. But then yeah, it's not true. And the final thing that I think this season has really taught me is that everything that you put your mind to, I know this is a cliche, but then
Mm-hmm.
literally everything you put your mind to, you can do it. You
Mm-hmm.
really can do it. Because I was at the point where I had two new research papers to write, and I
Mm-hmm.
hadn't started work on either of them. And this was like beginning of March.
Wow.
Yeah, beginning of March, and I had to submit the papers by middle of April. And then I had to revise two other research papers that I had written in a prof set I weren't happy with. So yeah, at a point, did I think I was not going to be able to do it? No, but I put my mind to it literally, and this has been by far the most difficult mental challenge that I have given to myself.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't done anything like this ever, and I'm not sure how I even pulled through. And that's where the grace of God comes through, because there are days where I will literally pray and say, God, I don't know what I'm writing. I don't even know if what I'm saying makes sense. Just help me, help me. Do not let any of my papers be rejected. Like, it was just help me through this, but also having a plan. So I had a plan. I had a
Mm-hmm.
deadline for all of my papers. So I
Mm-hmm.
asked the profs, when is my deadline for this paper? They tell me maybe whatever date, and I give myself 3 days before that.
Mm-hmm.
So that was what I was with. So yeah, I need to submit this paper by whatever date. I give myself 3 or 72 hours before that, so that I have ample time to
Mm-hmm.
revise and everything. I had a plan. So yeah, that's the thing. That's the last thing that I kind of learned from this whole period. And actually, but let me just say that during
Mm-hmm.
this period, like I was saying, where it's like it was just God's grace putting me through. And there was this particular day in March that I was just having a panic attack. Like, I was literally sitting by the work, and I was just blank. I couldn't breathe well. I felt like I was just, ugh, I don't know. And I
Mm-hmm.
started to take a nap, still didn't really go well.
Mm-hmm.
And I started to go and fix myself something to eat.
Mm-hmm.
And as I was facing myself something, I'm like, oh, I haven't listened to Hope Mongers this week because I really listen to it every week. I was like, haven't listened to it this week. And that was the episode with Charlotte Jose, Mrs. Charlotte Jose.
Wow.
And um as I'm listening to her, she's talking about her experiences in law school and her family dynamics and how that has shaped her. And even during the time where she was EC chair, and
Mm-hmm.
how I think she had lost two family members at the time, but she still had to like carry the country's elections on her shoulder, like literally.
Yes. Yes.
And all the jabbing that was even coming at her, and the propaganda and all those things. And as I'm listening to her, I don't even know how the fear that I had in me that day dissipated, because I'm like, she went through that. And I'm like, I mean, I've been through some things, but then I cannot compare what I'm going through right now with what she's been through, even in
Yes.
her adult life,
Yes.
even taking just the elections alone. And
Mm-hmm.
I was there. I know what was said about her. I
Mm-hmm.
heard it. I saw everything. And that was like an episode that really lifted up my spirit. And I just want to thank you for that.
My pleasure. And I think one thing I picked up from what she was saying is that there's a time for everything, and there's times when you have to put on your warrior suit
Yeah.
and sometimes power through it. There's a time for rest, true. There's a
Yeah.
time for sleep,
Yeah.
but we also have to recognize that in our walk of life, there are times when we have to put on that warrior suit and power through with the
Yeah.
conviction that the grace of God is with us. And
Yeah.
that is what she did. Nelia, I call you Nelia, but I realize you call yourself Nelia.
Until by now.
It's beautiful either way. Who was your support system through this?
My family,
Mm-hmm.
because like you said, not many people knew. And
Mm-hmm.
um it was my family and two friends of mine, two best friends of mine that I've had from high school. We've been friends for over 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
They knew to the T, like everything that was going on. Everyone else knew that I should have been done with my school by now. So I mean, everyone's like, "Oh, when are you done? When are you graduating?" I'm like, "Oh, I just took a break from school, or I just took a break from
Mm-hmm.
school, I just took a break." And then people want to pry, like, please, when someone tells you that they're taking a break, leave them be. You don't know
Leave
what.
them be. And I think that's an important thing because I want to say a couple of important points I'm getting. It's important to have a support system when you're going through something. Do not suffer in silence,
Mhm.
you know.
Mhm.
And I want to say anybody who's listening, who's experiencing suicidal ideation, or somebody is talking, about, oh, my life is not worth living, and just things that show that they're they're not so, they feel like they're giving up on life. Tell them to not suffer in silence, or you don't suffer in silence. Speak to somebody, talk to a friend, talk to a pastor, call your doctor. Nobody should suffer in silence. I think that's important. I think
Yeah.
another point that when you're going through something, absolutely have people with whom you share your story, but who you share your story to is important. Not
Yeah.
everybody deserves to hear your story, especially when it's working itself out. And that's just the truth. Number one, they may not have the faith. Number two, they may not have even the love for you to really want to see you through. Maybe they're just prying out of
Mm.
the need to gossip and take your
Yeah.
story out there. So it's important to have that support system of people you trust, like-minded people with whom you will bear yourself to. That's important as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely
Yeah.
important. My family was like, I knew that they were also going through their own issues. And for instance, my mom would. I remember when I told my mom that I was probably going to be sacked from school. So my mom takes this retreat like end of year, and so when everything was unfolding, she wasn't in within reach. So when she came and my sister told her that this is what is going on, and then she called me and she said in she was like, ah. It's makwa bompire asonya kopono. Me buy someone see me chini. And that was actually what she said. She was like, I mean, for anyone who didn't understand, like I went to pray and wait on God, and I came back, and this is the news I'm hearing that my daughter is going to be sacked from school, and I knew that she wasn't happy. But then again, after that, what she told me was like, she's like, I know you're going to think about the money that we've spent, but it's money.
Mm-hmm.
Let it go. If
Mm-hmm.
this doesn't go out,
Mm-hmm.
if it doesn't go as planned, do not bother about the money. Don't think that we spent money and we wasted money and everything. And for me, that was very calming and very reassuring, because that was one of the things that really pushed me to into this place of anxiety and depression because I'm like, my family has spent this much money on me, and it's all going to go down the drain because of some someone's negligence. So,
Somebody's clerical error, somebody not
yeah,
doing their job. Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
doing their job. So yeah, support is just very important, and I am just grateful for the family that I have.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I can't take that away.
And I have a feeling that despite your mother's statement, if you were to talk to her now, she'd probably, now that the fullness of time has come about, she'll probably look back and realize that actually, if she thought about it, perhaps God in that season of prayer, in that during that retreat, the
Mhm.
prayers that she prayed is probably
Mm,
even what
yeah,
helped to carry you through.
yeah, yeah.
Sometimes we don't know why God has called us into a season of prayer,
Mhm.
into a
Yeah.
season of just travailing. It's
Mhm.
for a time, it's for an appointed time. So absolutely, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Nelia, when did you write this awesome book? You are the author at the age of 25, almost 26. You are, and despite all of these accomplishments, you are also the author of a book called Being Phenomenal. And you are the convener of a movement, right? Called Being Phenomenal as well.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm
okay,
trying.
girl, tell me. So, in the midst of all of this, when did you write this book?
So this book, I actually started writing it around 2018.
Mm-hmm,
And I started writing it because of my curiosity
mm-hmm,
about our purpose and our identity as young Christian women. When I say young Christian women, I'm talking about unmarried and between the ages of, let's say, 18 to 30-ish, like just
mm-hmm,
within that space. And I find that, like I said, my mom was a pastor, so I grew up in the church, like church, grew up in full-time ministry, seeing everything unfold. And I figured that we as young Christian women were usually in a very awkward spot where it's like before you marry, it's like you're not really sure what to do with your life outside of work. And that's if you have work or if you have a trade. But if you don't, it's like just sit around and wait for someone to come marry you and just whisk you off and everything. And I find that a lot of us didn't find out what our purpose was. And I am a firm believer that your purpose decides and determines the person that you marry. And so I just started writing this book out of curiosity, like, okay, like when God created us as unmarried people, unmarried young women, what was his motive and how do we come into marriage with that? Because again, I feel like if you do not know who you are, your identity and everything as a woman before getting into that space where you had to like get together with another person, you're going to be confused. And that's why like I hear middle-aged women say, oh, I wish I would have known this, I wish I would have done this with my life, I wish I would have done that. And so I'm just in this place where I feel like I need to remind and talk about this with young women, Christian women within my demographic, and say that, hey, marriage is a good thing. God created marriage and everything, but I feel like we need to take a moment and go to God and ask God, why did you make me as an individual? Why did you create me as a woman? Because then again, even the marriage we're talking about, it's not for everyone. So does it mean that if you do not marry as a woman, you would not have fulfilled purpose?
or you're not
Uh,
worthy, because
exactly.
again, we come from a society, those
Mhm.
who are from Ghana, where if we're honest with you, it's quite patriarchal, and a
Yeah.
woman's worth is because you are Mrs. So and so. But
Yeah.
you're absolutely right, we need to, and probably for many women and many younger and older women, it's not even reminding, you are teaching us that yes, we were created for a purpose, right?
Yeah.
And God Himself said to Jeremiah, before I formed you, I knew you and I called you to be a prophet. So, yes, we were all created for a purpose. And I think that our journey in life is about discovering that purpose, understanding
Mhm.
what His overall purpose for us and
Yeah.
His assignment for us in each season.
I
You know,
agree. Agree.
and
Yeah.
Nenelia, here's an important thing for anybody who's listening. We don't like it when we go through the valleys of life. It's tough, and yet you've shared with me two different valleys of your life where each of them gold came out of it,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Diamonds came out of it. Losing an SRC election, you
Yeah.
know, whatever you were feeling, you go to bed and it channels into a new vision for
Yeah.
writing and expressing yourself and teaching women, which ultimately has become a book, which you
Yeah.
started in 2018, But from our conversation yesterday, you
Yeah.
actually finished writing it during that difficult
Yeah.
break between your
Yeah.
master's program.
Yeah, yeah. And Antia, but I find that it's very, God's timing is very peculiar and we sometimes will not understand. This book is not a big book. And I intentionally did it so because I wanted it to be something that's a message that you could internalize and not
Mm-hmm.
forget about it.
Mm-hmm.
But as I was writing this book, I shared a bit about my testimony with my school in it, like in the
Mm-hmm.
very last paragraph of this. And I didn't have this testimony in 2018. Like this was not going to be
Wow.
a part of the book if I published this book in 2019, even in 2019. It wouldn't
Yes.
have been a part of it. But so I feel like God's timing is very important. Like I started writing this book, I didn't finish it, I put it aside. But sometime last year, when everything was like going on and everything, I was like, let me just pick up this book and just get back to it. I'm at the point where I'm like, you know what, God, I think that you have a lot that you're going to unfold. And I just want to like just chill and just see how everything comes together. Because
Mm.
this book, I wanted it to be a resource so that was just going to be on the website and everything. But how I cannot even explain how I got into printing the book, I got into having to self-publish on Amazon. I don't know how it all came together. All I knew was that this is how it's going, this is how it's going. I just had to follow.
Great things are going to happen. And God's warriors, the people with whom he expects much from, they also go through a journey to
Mm,
get to that place. And I'm so proud of you, sweetheart. I am incredibly proud of you. I know
thank
God is going to do amazing things through being phenomenal, this book, and through your life, through your ministry, through your career. We've
you.
spent all our time talking about you, but we couldn't even talk about all the elements in the book. But the book is called Being Phenomenal, and it's on Amazon, correct?
Yes, it's going
I
to be
just
on
want
that.
to ask you one question. And you talked about from your Being Phenomenal, one of your chapters, and the wisdom that comes and purpose that comes from Proverbs 31, being a
Mm,
Proverbs 31 woman. And you say this from Proverbs 31, verse 17: she equips herself with strength, spiritual, mental, and physical fitness for her God given task, and makes her arms strong. Just talk to us a little bit about that, real quick, before we go.
I can't believe I wrote that. I believe that God has equipped all of us. And yesterday I
Mm,
was just sharing with a friend how I feel like God has placed a seed within each and every one of us.
mm,
And that seed would become fruitful. And then it's through that fruitful that's going to multiply. There are different dimensions to our purpose and our life here on earth and our assignment. And sometimes we think that it's going to look a certain type of way. Sometimes we feel like we need just the physical strength or we need just the mental strength, fortitude, or we just need something else. But then we forget that sometimes there are layers to how our purpose is going to unveil. And it's really up to you, the individual, to go back to God and ask Him in every season of your life what tools you would need to fulfill your assignment and your purpose in that given space in that given time. And so the strength and the dignity that comes with your purpose is the fact that it's layered, it's dimensional, but ultimately go to God and know how you can make use of those tools that He's already given you, is already embedded in you. But then there are times where, like for instance, going through this period, I needed the tool of grit. That was what I had. I wouldn't even say that I really had a lot of faith. I won't lie. Like I won't sit here and lie and say I had a lot of faith. And I really wrote about it. And I said that I knew I wasn't going to make that deadline that was given to me initially. It wasn't about not having faith. It was just about what it really was. And
reality.
so,
Hmm.
yeah, so it was really just it's about knowing what tools and how to make use of them effectively within every given space of your assignment and your purpose. And
And I would even hasten to say this is how, because, one thing I've been saying is that as human beings, we are tripartite beings. So spirit, soul, and body. And so if we're going to accomplish what God has ordained, right, before we were even born, right,
mm,
to accomplish, we're going to have to prepare ourselves like an athlete prepares himself to go into the competition. And
mm,
that preparation will be spiritual, mental, physical. We must
yeah,
equip ourselves with that strength. We must look after ourselves. and
yeah,
and I think when we equip ourselves with spiritual health, mental health, physical health, I think that makes our arms strong, as the verse says.
Yeah.
So anyway, the way I love how the version you put in your book, and it just jumped out at me and
Yeah.
reminded me once again, one more time, that as phenomenal women, as that Proverbs 31 woman doing and accomplishing God's will in our lives, we must gird ourselves
Yeah.
spiritually, physically, and mentally, emotionally. All
Yeah.
three are important. So
Yeah.
you're an amazing young woman, sweetheart.
Thank you, Auntie Abba. And Auntie Abba,
Yeah.
let me just say, I know we're out of time, but let me just say that I, when your book came out and I saw that it had gone into a podcast, I said to myself one day that I was going to be on this podcast. I didn't know how it was going to
Wow.
happen, but I said it to myself that I was going to be here, and here I am. So dreams
Here
to
you are. Amazing. And it's all my honor. It's all my honor because I see you going places, and I'm incredibly know that you have another mother, another Auntie Abba praying for you and willing you on. All right. So thank you so much, guys. I hope you enjoyed this. This is Nelia Jemfi, and she's the author of Being Phenomenal. We'll talk soon, guys. Thank you. Thanks for joining us this week on the Hope Mongers podcast with Abaketo Anda. We'd like to continue to bring you amazing episodes, so please subscribe to the show. And if you enjoyed what you just heard, please give us a good rating. You can also follow us on social media at Abaketo Anda. My best-selling book, Reflections of a Hope Monger, which inspired this podcast, is available now on Amazon. Thanks for listening. See you next time, and be a hope monger.